It was close to midnight when Sarah stood in the quiet hallway of the mansion, her trembling hands clutching a small velvet pouch. Inside was more money than she had ever seen in her life. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps as the enormity of what she had just done crashed over her. She had stolen from a man who had everything: wealth, power, respect. But Sarah wasn't thinking about him. All she could see in her mind was the pale face of her 8-year-old daughter, Ava, lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. The doctors had been clear: without the surgery, Ava wouldn't survive. Insurance wouldn't cover it, and no amount of extra shifts could raise the sum in time. Desperation had forced Sarah's hand, and now, for the first time in her life, she had crossed a line she swore she never would. Sarah was a maid in the household of billionaire James Whitmore, a man both admired and feared. To her, he had always been a distant figure, cold, precise, surrounded by walls taller than his skyscrapers. She had spent 2 years polishing his floors, arranging his suits, and blending into the shadows of his grand estate. He never looked at her twice, never asked her name, and yet, tonight, it was his money she had taken, believing it was the only way to save her child. She slipped out of the mansion into the freezing night, clutching the pouch as though it were oxygen itself. Every step toward the hospital felt like a betrayal, but every step also felt like hope. When she handed the money to the hospital clerk and signed the papers, tears spilled down her cheeks. Ava would have a chance now, a chance to breathe, a chance to live. That was all Sarah wanted, but the relief was short-lived. The next morning, as she sat by Ava's bedside, her phone buzzed. It was her manager from the mansion. "Sarah." The voice whispered nervously, "Mr. Whitmore knows. He's asked for you, immediately." Her heart dropped. She kissed her daughter's forehead, whispering, "Be strong, baby," and walked out with her stomach in knots. Back at the mansion, Sarah entered the study. James Whitmore stood by the window, his broad frame outlined against the rising sun. On his desk sat the empty safe, the lock broken. He turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. For a long moment, silence suffocated the room. "You took it," he said finally, his voice calm but razor-sharp. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she fell to her knees. "Please, I had no choice. My daughter, she's dying. The doctors said surgery was the only way, and I couldn't." Her words broke into sobs. "I'll work the rest of my life to pay it back. Please, sir, don't take her away from me. She's all I have." James's expression didn't change, but inside him, something stirred. He had heard pleas before, countless times. Business, men begging for extensions, rivals groveling for mercy. He had learned to steel himself to never bend, yet this was different. He saw the rawness in Sarah's tears, the desperation in her voice, the truth in her trembling. "Stand up," he said. She obeyed, her eyes fixed on the ground, awaiting the storm she knew was coming. But instead of anger, James's next words left her speechless. How much was it? Sarah's lips quivered. 75,000. James nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully. "And the surgery, it will save her." "Yes," Sarah whispered. The silence stretched again. Then James did something no one could have predicted. He walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a checkbook. Without hesitation, he scribbled a number, signed it, and handed it to her. Her eyes widened as she read the amount. $1 million. "I don't want you to pay me back," he said firmly. "Take this. Use it for her surgery, for her treatment, for her future. And for yours." Sarah's mouth fell open. The paper shook in her hand as though it were too heavy to hold. I don't understand. Why would you do this, after what I did?" James's gaze softened, and for the first time, Sarah saw the man beneath the armor of wealth. "Because once, a long time ago, I was where you are. My mother worked herself to the bone to keep me alive when I was sick. She didn't have the money either, but someone I barely knew, paid for my surgery. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here today." His voice cracked slightly. "And I swore that if I ever had the chance, I'd do the same for someone else." Sarah's tears flowed freely, her knees buckling as she clutched the check to her chest. "I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you." James placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Don't thank me. Just be there for your daughter. That's all that matters." When Sarah returned to the hospital and handed the doctors the check, the staff gasped. The surgery was scheduled immediately, and within days, Ava's fragile body began to heal. Sarah never left her side, holding her hand, whispering prayers of gratitude. Weeks later, James himself walked into the hospital room. Ava was sitting up, smiling faintly, her cheeks no longer pale. When she saw him, she tilted her head curiously. "Are you the man who saved me?" she asked in a small voice. James knelt beside her bed, his eyes soft. "No, sweetheart, your mother did. She saved you. I just gave her a little help." Ava grinned, the kind of innocent smile that could light up a dark world. And in that moment, the cold billionaire felt warmth he hadn't known in years. From that day on, James's mansion was no longer just a place of wealth and power. It became a place where Sarah was not a maid but a trusted friend, and Ava was treated like family. The man who once seemed untouchable had opened his heart, and the ripple of his kindness touched everyone around him. The story spread quietly at first among the hospital staff, then through whispers in the community, until eventually it made headlines. A billionaire forgiving theft and rewarding it with generosity was something people couldn't wrap their minds around. But those who heard the full truth understood. It wasn't about money. It was about humanity. And for Sarah, it was proof that even in the darkest hour, light can come from the most unexpected place.